everyone, and welcome to another exciting speculation video. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Shades.
Hey, Shades, what are you doing here?
Oh, how did I get here?
Well, you see, you were in the future, and then I used Wolverine to talk to you in the future.
That's more convoluted than that film. That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, that's that's what I did. Shades, we need you to hope again.
To hope summers again. Yeah, sweet. Sounds good.
So I got ShadesAtKnight on the show today to chat a little bit about the new X-Men Apocalypse trailer, which the internet just lit up about.
Yeah.
Everybody's super excited about this movie, and it's really cool that it's not being buried with so much else coming out next year.
Yes, exactly. Like when you look at the competition, for lack of a better term, next year, and I hate sort of thinking of these comic book movies as competition and against
Me
each
too.
other. But at the same time, when you look at the amount of other stuff that is coming out next year, just within the comic book superhero genre alone, it is good that this film has, just based on this trailer, is now a one of the front runners. It's good. It's co-leading the pack, if I dare say, which is good.
Well, I think they made the trailer they needed to. I think they put it out at the right time.
Yeah,
It's a good idea to start getting everybody stoked for these movies while they're finally seeing the one movie that everyone's going to spend money to see this year.
that's right. Yeah.
I was really surprised that this and the Star Trek trailer came out already.
Yeah, the Star Trek trailer, particularly, I got to admit, I sort of found myself kind of forgetting that film was coming out next year, and amongst everything
Oh, and
that's
don't
going on.
worry, everyone will forget about it. That will have that trailer will have the opposite effect of this one.
Yeah, well, it certainly had the opposite effect on me. But
Where I mean, I don't want to talk about that, but I just think that a lot of people are going to forget about that project, and this will not. This will be one that will stick with them
yeah,
after.
I kind of feel like if I can make this comparison, and maybe people won't like this comparison, but I feel like this is X-Men Apocalypse is Jurassic World, where Star Trek Beyond is Terminator Genesis. Like I sort of feel like, franchises that are, a long time standing, and what have you, but one I think is clearly the interest level is way up as compared to the other one. And I'm not saying the box office will necessarily look that way. I don't think X Men Apocalypse is going to be doing
It's
Jurassic World numbers, but I
no, and I love that comparison. The only thing I was gonna say about it is the difference is I knew Jurassic World would do okay. I didn't know it was gonna do that.
no, that's true. That was like a phenomenon out of the
I don't
blue.
think anybody expected that. Now, since we're talking about how ginormous 2016 is going to be, I don't think Jurassic World would have done those numbers had it been released next year.
Maybe not. It is funny when I was thinking, when that first trailer came out, and then the Star Wars teaser came out, like I think it was in like the same week, if I remember
Oh
correctly.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like, oh, well, there kind of goes everyone's excitement for Jurassic World. Here comes that darn Star Wars. But
But the nice thing is, of course, that they were months apart from each other.
that's right. Yeah. So that ended up working out well. And at the time of this recording, obviously, Star Wars rather, is about to come out. I'm seeing it. By this time tomorrow, I will have seen it, which is kind of a scary thought. And I'm not even that big of a Star Wars fan. But
So is it just coming out a day early in Australia, or how are you seeing it a day before the day before?
because we are a day ahead, so it's still coming out.
Oh, I'm an idiot.
And no, that's okay. But yeah, because it's coming out, it comes out December 17th here as well. So yeah, is that the date?
See, I
17th? Yeah. So
think it was a certain number of hours one direction, and you're actually more hours another direction, and I just didn't know.
yeah, we're a day ahead. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm just going to see it during the day, and like I'm not going to any sort of midnight or advanced screening. But yeah, so it is kind of funny when you look at, because like the way films are advertised has always been something that fascinated me. If you don't know anything about me, trailers are something I'm interested in, and it's
And if you do know Shades, that goes without saying.
yeah, that's the understatement of the century. But I do find it interesting how those films were advertised, and here we are once again, where it's December time, it's late in the year, and we're starting to advertise the major summer films for next year again. I mean, I know we've been getting stuff for Batman Superman for quite a while, but I mean, that was a film that was initially intended to be released this year, so they had a lot more footage to show a lot earlier than X-Men did.
And
But
is of course coming out earlier than a lot of these.
that's correct, yeah. So
Nobody would have expected that to be March. That is fascinating.
it is, yeah. But now that we're at this point where we're getting trailers for X-Men and Star Trek and Civil War and even Ninja Turtles, like we're at this this point now where we're getting trailers for everything, and it feels like we've just had this big onslaught of trailers recently, like even with the most recent Batman Superman one, which was only a couple of weeks ago. And I really felt like, and I'm not sure how you felt about this trailer, but like I didn't particularly care for that trailer for Batman Superman, and I feel like that might have helped the cause for X-Men a little bit. If had they released the Comic-Con trailer, for example, I don't know if as many people would be talking about X-Men as much as they are right now.
Oh, that's fair. And I mean, a lot of people share your opinion with that. I feel like the only person on the planet that was really excited about that trailer. But Steve and I did a video on it, and we've talked about it. But yeah, no, you might be onto something there. And it's also really interesting because we had not one but four trailers this week.
Yeah.
For big genre things, and this is the one that the really big standout. By the way, quick plug, because this will be the first video that I post on these. I want to do a special Apocalypse video with Shades, so this will be a little bit more lengthy, and we'll do speculation and stuff. But you'll get shorter snippets from the radio show this week with Vince and I talking about the other three.
Cool.
So we are gonna do all those also, Star Trek and Ninja Turtles and Independence Day Resurgence.
Oh yes, that was the other one I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just fascinating that that's even happening.
I know, right?
But anyway, so Apocalypse. So where are you now on the excitement meter versus where you were after Days of Future Past? Because you and I were both real positive about this project before we knew very much about it.
That's true. Yeah, like when they announced that film, I was very excited, and that they announced that film before Days of Future Past even came out, and I'll never forget seeing his tweet where it's like Apocalypse 2016. I was like, oh, wow, okay, cool. And, I was initially quite excited for it when they announced it was going to be the 80s, because I thought, great, they're doing a period that is very synonymous with X-Men. And so I've been super excited for it this whole time. And I did watch the Comic-Con trailer for this, even though it was bootleg. And, I mean, there are a lot of similarities between the two trailers. Like, the music is pretty much the same. There are some different moments, though. Including they've cut out Magneto swearing in this trailer. There's got to be the F-bomb in all the X-Men films now, apparently. 4 in a row.
That's right.
It's weird.
Yep. That's a staple now.
It's a staple. The X-Men swear. They're gritty, you see. But
even Jessica Jones doesn't say the F word.
Exactly. She'll say GD a lot, but never the F word. But yeah, so here we are with X-Men Apocalypse, and I was super excited for it, and this trailer I thought blew it out of the water. I thought this trailer was fantastic. This was the trailer that it absolutely needed to be in terms of, there was a lot of backlash against how Apocalypse looked when there was that one photo released, and there were all the jokes about Ivan Ooze and what have you, and I was going, like I was frustrated with those people because, I mean, I thought he looked cool. I was more excited to see Oscar Isaac giving a Apocalypse performance than interested in seeing him be a big CGI man. And this trailer really showed that he will get to look a lot more like comic book Apocalypse with the big lips and the tubes coming out of his head and what have you. And B, I mean, he grows big in this trailer. So anyone who thinks that we're not getting Apocalypse and we're getting this kind of watered down mutant, I think, a lot of those fears were put to rest with this trailer, and I thought it just did a really fantastic job advertising this film for the casual moviegoer as well as the hardcore X-Men fans. I thought that was just a stellar job at advertising this film for both of those camps. I thought that was great.
Although I do think it's important to note that he does now have something else in common with Ivan Ooze because they both get giant,
Well,
and that's pretty hilarious.
that
But
it is funny because Apocalypse, his powers have always been so vague in terms of what he can do. Like, I
yeah,
remember being weirded out in the animated series when he can just morph into a gargoyle. But
I guess you got to chalk that up to he stole that from somebody.
exactly, it's another popular show at the time. But yeah, so like I mean, his powers have always been very kind of they're just. I mean, he's got robot hands and what have you. But yeah, I mean, I got a lot greater sense of the purpose of Apocalypse, being the villain of this film and why they've gone with him as opposed to, oh, who do we have left? Apocalypse and Sinister. Let's do Apocalypse. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there really seems to be a purpose.
Well, I want to mention the first image we got from him again with the whole purple thing and people calling him Ivan Ooze and all that. Because I was annoyed with the folks that thought that looked too silly for a different reason, which is I never thought that was the final version,
Yes, that's true.
and thought that it was really weird that they showed it to like in those people's defense, we shouldn't have gotten that early. I think it's really bizarre that this trailer is kind of keeping him secluded and not
Yeah,
showing too much of him. And then
yeah.
but the first image we had of him was a full body shot. That's really strange. Like obviously. And I mean, I was hoping I was right about this. I might not have been, but it was. But in that, I don't mean to say too much of it. I told you so, but in that Entertainment Weekly thing, I thought that it was just the color palette for that change or for that page that made him look purple.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's definitely. I was always saying they're clearly using purple
It's
lighting
just
because
like,
of Psylocke, like she was there in the
yeah,
shot.
yeah,
Uh,
that's what I thought. But the problem is, it doesn't look like they're all there. It looks like they took, say, because that's probably what they did, that they took separate pictures from everybody, and then they tried to make the lighting look like it was all in the same place, and so people, maybe somewhat understandably, were like, "Why is he purple?"
yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. He could have looked exactly like that, and the movie be great, and me not care.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing. Like I said, I'm more intrigued by what Oscar Isaac does with this role as opposed to, man, he doesn't have the big lips. Like I am past the point. Like I don't really get I don't really find myself fanboying out for many things anymore. I think because we're so spoiled with how much we get. And Apocalypse, being one of those, like I said, one of the last major X-Men characters and certainly one of the last major X-Men villains, to, be done on the big screen now, his appearance, I was like, it doesn't necessarily mean, if there's one thing that we should learn from X-Men, it's that just because they might not look like their comic book counterpart doesn't necessarily mean that they're not. And whether it be the leather suits or Xavier with long hair or what have you, it's like we the X-Men films, especially the Bryan Singer X-Men films, have always sort of done these characters well, in my opinion. Despite what their appearance may be. So I was never worried in that sense. I was more annoyed with the internet for jumping to conclusions, and I guess this trailer it did go on the defensive a little bit in, hiding how he looked, and then kind of the big reveal at the end of him looking just straight up Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I thought that was well done to quell those people and their fears.
Um, the obviously the biggest thing for me was the final shot we're left with,
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and I expected that they would probably have him finally go bald in that movie. I didn't think they'd show it to us this early, and it looks great. And it's not one of those things like with the Batman vs Superman trailer, the recent one, where I told you that I liked that trailer and that it actually had me more excited about the movie, but it revealed way too much stuff.
It definitely did.
And like I was really irritated about the Doomsday thing. I was like, you save that. Like you don't tell us about that yet.
Yeah.
But this, I think McAvoy, looking straight up Patrick Stewart, Professor Xavier, is exactly what you sell that movie on.
Absolutely. And I will stand here and say how wrong I was way back in 2010.
Yay!
Yeah, absolutely. Like when they cast him, I was like, I don't know about that casting. And, I will be happily admit how wrong I was because he's been absolutely fantastic in the role. And one of the things I think is really nailed, not only from like, being a continuation or being, the pre Patrick Stewart Xavier, being a continuation of that character, but just being comic book Xavier is like his eyebrows. Like the
Yeah.
stern look that he gets, that's like straight up Professor X. He's great casting physically, and I never thought we'd get another Xavier that was as perfect as Patrick Stewart, and we absolutely do have that. And yeah, he looks phenomenal. Even the suit that he's wearing in that shot is pretty similar to when we first meet Patrick Stewart in X-Men One. So
They have
that's
they
great.
have not been doing enough merchandising for those movies, and I would love to get the exact figure they put out for the first X-Men, but with him instead.
Oh yeah, yeah,
To put
yeah.
next to my Patrick Stewart figure, because he's spitting image now, just younger, and it's fantastic. This is more scripting, certainly, but obviously, you need the great performance to go with it. We have had all the different layers, or most of the different layers of Xavier that we didn't really get to delve into as much with Patrick Stewart's, because it was more about Wolverine, and we would write him out of the movie early and stuff. But we've got we had a lot of the like Xavier moral ambiguity, his darker side in Days of Future Past, and I get the sense that they're going to explore that even more here.
Yeah, the focus I thought on Apocalypse saying you've been fooled by blind leaders and it sort of focusing on Xavier in that shot, I think really supports that argument. The it's interesting the team that we have in this movie because like we never see the remaining first class characters and the new young characters, the Cyclops, Jean, and Nightcrawler. Like we never see all of those characters all together. So
Yeah.
what happens to certain members? I certainly have a theory about Havoc, and I am interested to see what happens there because it's not like we see Xavier outside of the mansion in this trailer. So yeah,
Yeah, so you're absolutely right about the line you mentioned. The other big one, and the thing that has stuck with me most about this trailer, besides the end of that, and of course you know how fixated I am on both Xavier and this portrayal of him,
yeah.
but also I've never felt this much power.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And that really made me wonder if he might go full on onslaught.
I didn't think of it like that. That's true. Yeah, if
I
there
mean,
was a
they
way to do Onslaught, it would be doing it with Apocalypse infecting him or what have you, as opposed to him bonding with Magneto. So
I
yeah,
mean, it is possible, and this might be a really radical leap, but it is possible that because I've been predicting that they're gonna write out Xavier and or Magneto in this movie to make way for the other up and coming characters, because this has been their trilogy, and like Bryan Singer, like his quote about that his in interviews has been, this is the culmination of what we've been doing with their characters. Surely they're going to kill off one or both of them or find some other way to write them out. Is it not possible that the way we're writing out Xavier is to turn him into the villain for the next piece?
I think that's possible. I would be surprised if they went down that road. I think it's kind of interesting. There's that shot where the Four Horsemen and Apocalypse are in the infamous, Cerebro Hall, and
Yeah.
Magneto, levitates Xavier away. But like, it's not like Xavier is fighting that. Like, he looks like he's passed out or something like that. He's collapsed in the chair. Um, so I'm thinking that they get him. The Four Horsemen get him, and need his mind or his power or what have you. And I feel like that's how they write him out for a lot of this film, and that causes, because there is one shot where we've got Beast, Mystique, Quicksilver, Cyclops, and Jean all in the Blackbird. So I presume that's where they're off to get him. and try and save
Maybe
him.
so. I hadn't thought of that. Honestly, I figured he would still be really front and center through most of this, but you might be right. Let me amend something I said a minute ago, because now that I'm thinking about it, looking at the end of Days of Future Past, something I said a minute ago doesn't actually work. We can't kill him.
No.
Like anything we do, we know about certain characters that are in the future that we can't kill. And
Well,
until we come up with some kind of a thing that makes it possible to alter that future, we have every reason to think that that everything that everything in the mid 2020s or whenever we are there is that way.
I will say that I do think, the cause for Apocalypse to be in this film is because they have caused such a rift in the timeline, that is what causes him to.
We don't know that for
We don't
sure,
know
though.
that. That's my theory. So
Okay,
because I
that's a good theory.
maybe that's me justifying, knowing that, Cyclops and Jean and Xavier are all alive, and Beast are all alive in the future.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we go with this.
Well,
Um,
because the problem, of course, is that, and this would have been even a bigger problem if you had tried to do this movie without the soft reboot. Is, well, we're still in prequel territory, so we've got this movie called Apocalypse, but we know the world can't end. I mean, obviously things are going to work out more or less. The world's not going to end, but I'm
that
just
would be a
saying that,
depressing
like,
ending. Yeah.
if you know yeah, we don't want it to be Beneath the Planet of the Apes or anything.
Yes.
But if you know that you've got all these other movies that are supposed to happen, and that this is a prequel thing, then the stakes don't seem as high. And so, since we've soft rebooted, the stakes in a way do seem higher. Except you have to remember that we have been with Wolverine to the future, and we know that the mansion is still there and everything works out okay, despite the fact that there is apparently a collapsed X mansion in this.
Yes. Um,
It wasn't in the trailer, but I read something about an image of that at a Comic Con.
Now, yeah, like I mean, I do think that might be where they are, and like when they're all standing in the rubble and what have you, like that might be the mansion. Actually, I got to admit, I haven't really properly
We
sort of.
can rebuild it. I mean, Bruce Wayne rebuilt his,
Yes,
but
and something that I think really
brick for
works,
brick.
and something that I think really works about that is that the X Mansion is different in the trilogy than the mansion that they used in First
Oh,
Class.
that's a really good point. Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot about that. It is different. I mean, the sign is the same, but everything
everything else. Yeah,
everything else is different. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Okay.
and of course, the lower levels can always, survive these attacks. So, like, that's why those holes are the same. So yeah, it could be just that, that's why there's a different mansion in the
Yeah,
2000s.
you can always build a different basketball court on top of the jet.
That's correct. Yes. Was there even a basketball court in the 60s? Probably not.
I don't know if there was. I don't know. I haven't scrutinized it quite that closely, Shade. Um, so we've got a Xavier at the end of that trailer that is spitting image of Patrick Stewart. There is a shot of Fassbender in the new closer like colors that are the same as the earlier movies,
Yeah.
Magneto suit, and there's one shot where I mean you blink you miss it, but there's one shot where he looks really McKellen.
Yes. And Fassbender was really more playing McKellen in Days of Future Past than he was in First Class, because
Yeah,
in First Class he just uses his Irish accent at times. It's odd, but and I do believe that was Matthew Vaughn's suggestion, but like so I'm not throwing Fassbender under the bus for that because I think he's excellent, but I am interested in the fact that not only is his costume a little closer to the McKellen costume, but we are getting closer to potentially having the black suits in this one, which I know has.
oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't like that, but I've got to admit I'm so far beyond caring that the X-Men wear black. It doesn't bother me. It's just I could care less at this
Well,
point.
we've also kind of had our cake and eaten it too a little bit, where we got the yellow suits in First Class. And I mean, we kind of got to see, a more kind of earlier '60s thing, and so that's fun. But no, I think it's really interesting that we soft rebooted. We can go anywhere we want to, and we are still working toward the look and the tone and atmosphere of the movie set later, but I suspect a lot more like deeper characterization for characters that got written out or didn't get anything to do later. And I just think it's really interesting that we're doing all of that at the same time.
That's correct. Yeah, I think it's, and I'll talk about my my theory with Havoc here.
Yeah,
I
we should kind of go down the list, I think, because there are so many characters.
That is true. Yeah.
It's enormous, and it's so funny how far away we've gotten from X3. Like, I have so much faith in a Singer and in these movies now that he can hand me a list like this that's like twice as long as X3, and I don't blink an eye at it anymore.
Yeah, like there was a
I'm
time.
just not worried about it.
Absolutely, like there was a
I feel like
time.
I should be, but I'm not. I mean, I trust him. Maybe my expectations will be too high, but I kind of trust him.
Well, when you look at both X2 and Days of Future Past, I mean, he's handled it before, so
Yeah.
he set the precedent. But like, there was a time when Jubilee was being cast and Psylocke was being cast, and I was going, "Oh man, there's more mutants in this than I thought." And but now, like, and I got over that quite quickly because I sort of realized, no, I don't think I do have anything to worry about because it's Singer and he seems to know what he's doing with these larger casts. And here we are with this big cast, and where you're introducing these younger versions of characters we know. We're bringing back characters from First Class and Days of Future Past, and we're also introducing brand new mutants we've never seen before. So it's
Yeah.
this.
And we're introducing new versions of mutants we have seen before that won't be precisely the same people and are from a different era.
That's looking at you, Angel, um,
And Crawler,
and Nightcrawler. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and like I mean, it's and same with. I mean, I guess technically Psylocke was in X-Men 3, but I count her as a brand new character.
And Jubilee is the same
Jubilee
way.
is the other one. Yeah, I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you've got Cyclops and Jean and Nightcrawler who are essentially the new X-Men in this movie. And I thought it was really interesting. They have that scene where Moira, who they're also bringing back, which I enjoy
Yep.
because I like Rose Byrne.
I liked her too.
Yeah, she's not Scottish, but once again, the X-Men are not as international in the movies as they are in the comics. So I've gotten over that a long time ago. With Storm and Colossus and Pyro and all these characters who have accents, and yet we have Vinnie Jones being British. It's like, okay, I don't need to care. But and Banshee is another one that just wasn't the race that they're meant to be. But we have this scene where Xavier and Havoc are talking to Moira at the CIA, and it's weird seeing Havoc in that role because he's essentially being Cyclops. He's Xavier's sort of deputy right hand guy, and or that's how it appears anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a feeling that I don't think Havoc is surviving this movie, and
I don't think so either.
yeah, and I feel like that's the catalyst for Scott to step up.
Well, and it's weird because it's like we killed off most of the original First Class X-Men last time.
Yes,
And like off screen, it was like I don't want to say it was funny because because Singer did a really good job of making that a really dramatic plot point for Mystique. But I mean, like, and then Havoc's there for like 5 seconds, and I'm like, I'm not real sure why we kept him alive either, except that we've got Scott coming.
yeah,
And I guess that was kind of the big thing, is that you needed him as kind of the thing to bring him in. But yeah, I'm with you. I would expect Havoc to not survive because Singer's gonna want to make his team look like the later teams from the earlier movies, and be the more really popular X-Men characters.
yeah,
Because
and
obviously he was brought in just because they were out of mutants that they could use for that period.
that's right. Like when they brought in Havoc, it did tick me off at the time because it just meant that Havoc was the older brother, and that does change their dynamic. And
Oh,
but now I'm interested in what they're doing there because ages back, Singer, I think on his Instagram, like posted a photo of, he said like the Summers family, and it was who I presume are playing Scott and Havoc's parents. And I mean, obviously, I never expected we'd get Corsair in these movies, but
Yeah,
it is funny
yeah.
seeing Christopher Summers as just a dude. But so we,
Yeah, but wouldn't it be really funny if you got to the end of that movie and like the after credit scene was he gets picked up by a spaceship?
space pirate, yeah.
They
But
should. That's what they should do.
that should be the after credit scenes, like just full on Shi'ar next time.
Yeah.
Just do the Dark Phoenix right.
Well, I keep saying that the big thing that we haven't done yet is take X Men to space.
Yeah,
And now that we're doing the apocalypse, and we're doing, we should talk about this, but like the big godhood and religious stuff, and we haven't gotten to really delve into that very much yet. Now that we're going to have done that, like the next logical place is aliens.
that's right. Yeah. So
I don't see Singer going that far, but maybe I don't know.
I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, but I feel like I mean, obviously they were thinking the same thing 10 years ago because we got the multiple personality instead of an alien entity.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
like
and it is a foregone conclusion at this point that we get a more true to the comics adaptation of Phoenix Saga. Yeah.
I really hope so. I feel um, like I don't want to say that we've earned that. I feel like the series has earned doing that over again. So I definitely feel like that's a possibility now where a long time ago, I don't think they would have gone for something like that so quickly, but I think it's possible now.
Well, it just feels weird to have one of the biggest, iconic, memorable series adapted in some way with Days of Future Past and not Phoenix Saga.
Yeah, I will agree
And
with that. Yeah.
yeah, they sort of kind of did it in X3, but part of what we're doing now is paving over the stuff that people didn't like.
Yeah. Yes. Fixing the things that the people
I
didn't
mean, we
like.
talked
Yeah.
about this. I think Eric and I maybe talked about this last year. I forget, and I said, well, that would be strange if you did it twice, and you can, and there just happened to be this entity in space that dealt with Jean Grey that called itself the Phoenix when she, in the other timeline, had an alternate personality that had that. But I think they can come up with a clever way to make it work, and
Yeah.
it seems like if they do it right, it's almost worth doing it, even if it is too convenient.
Yeah. And
Almost.
it was always super hokey to me in X-Men 3, where Xavier was like, it came to call itself the Phoenix. And it's like, okay, why?
Yeah, why oh why? It didn't rise from the ashes or anything.
No. If they were calling Jean that because she essentially did rise from not the ashes, but the depths of Alkali Lake, then that would be fine, I guess. That would at least be better than this multiple personality thing called itself the Phoenix. Uh,
Yeah, because then we've just already started from a weird, convenient place in the first place.
yeah,
Because the entity was already calling itself the Phoenix, and then she rises from the water.
yeah. And why would why do they even throw that in? Because it's not like they refer to her as the Phoenix ever again. They're never like,
No,
we need to
just get
stop
that
the
clear.
Phoenix. It's we need to stop Jean. So
Yeah.
that's man. Add that to the list of stuff for X-Men 3. Never actually thought about that, but yeah. Uh,
But yeah, like I said, I just think it's really fascinating that we're paving over stuff, but still getting to things that we already did, in the first place, and that makes me think that they're kind of thinking about it, that it's not just okay, now we can do whatever we want to.
that's right.
That these characters are still these characters, and I mean, like we're cheating a little bit, or we're cheating a lot actually, because we certainly have characters that can't possibly be as old as they are right now. I
Well,
mean, there's stuff like that. We're having to cheat a little bit to make it work,
yeah.
but the stories have been really good the last couple of movies. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, like I'm at this point now where I can forgive them for that because, it's like the timeline for the original X-Men movies was always so ambiguous, and I mean, it even still is ambiguous because we don't know how much time passed between X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, and then X-Men 2 and X-Men 3, and then X-Men 3 and Days of Future Past. Like, it's never properly established because even in X-Men 2, the way Cyclops and Jean talk about, her powers evolving makes it sound like, the events of X-Men 1 only happened a couple of months ago, never that it was 3 years ago. Um,
Yeah, the thing that's weird about it though is that if you can if you can buy things directors say as canonical, and of course, that's not fair. Things should be in movies, but this is a tough one because it's a retroactive thing. I read that Bryan Singer has come out and said that this movie is supposed to be 20 years before X-Men 1, which puts X-Men 1 at almost precisely the year that it was put out. Which means that we know for sure now that those movies take place in the early 2000s.
Sure, yeah. So
And they kind of had to anyway because of ages and stuff. But then that's rough because the not too distant future thing now only works if you're watching it back when they came out.
yeah, that's true.
So that's weird, and that puts us forever in period territory no matter what we do now. Like, we have a timeline now. I mean, but that was the risk you always ran, making First Class a period piece.
Yeah, and that was what I always said. Is like I always felt like they did put that way too far in the past. And I like the idea of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but I always felt like they still could have told, stories in the 80s. And I did feel like, they, especially when the Cuban Missile Crisis to me was the only thing defining about the 60s about that film. I don't feel like they embraced that time period as much as they could have. Certainly not as much as
they did a better job with the 70s.
I was going to say certainly not as much as Days of Future Past did with the 70s.
Especially because they did a lot more fun, like alternate history stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at that and like the fashion, the music, the television, like they reference so much of 70s pop culture in that film, and like I said, the fashion and the style, and in the 60s, apart from Xavier saying groovy a few times, I mean, that didn't really embrace the 60s as much as I feel like it could have.
I mean, the fashions and cars and things were there, but I see what you're saying. It wasn't a love letter to the 60s like that was a love letter to the 70s.
Yeah.
You had kind of a weird thing with putting First Class in the 60s where you have this potential unfortunate on the nose thing if you're not careful, where you're doing an. Are you there, Kurt?
Yes, I'm there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Something changed on my screen, and I thought that you had disappeared.
Oh, okay.
Where you, I just want to make sure that I wasn't just talking to myself. So you've got this potential on the nose thing that they avoided, and I think part of the reason they didn't do too much 60s stuff was to avoid this, where you have an allegory for the civil rights movement in the period where the civil rights movement happened.
Interesting. Like I guess, and I don't want to hate on First Class. I know when people love when I do that. And I mean, to be fair, like I do think First Class is a quality movie. I just, I was always sort of annoyed by how I felt they rushed through, the relationship with Xavier and Magneto for something that felt like such a long-standing relationship in the first films.
Well, and that is a big problem, and I mean they've redeemed it some already, I think. But I guess the other thing is, from what we were talking about, we should backtrack for a second, because earlier we were both kind of praising the recent movies for juggling characters real well. That movie did have problems with that.
Yeah, that movie had a lot of problems with that. And
Days of Future Past, some people complained that the future characters didn't get enough to do, but then it wasn't really about them.
No, they.
So that was more okay.
Yeah, to me, getting to see the future characters was, more fun, to see Iceman again and to see, Ellen Page get another crack at Kitty Pryde, that was more fun to me than it was, this is a story about them. And, I mean, it was intended, I guess, that we get a little more of them, like when, with the road cut. I mean, it was certainly intended that we get more scenes with those guys, but those scenes did feel a little bit more forced in that cut. So,
and maybe we've talked about this, in my personal opinion, with the exception of the Bishop exposition speech, which should have stayed in. That's the one big thing I wish they'd kept, because it had some discussion about the moral implications of time travel, and they movies don't do that enough, and so that was irritating. But the other thing too is that guy has such a cool accent.
Yes.
For him to almost never talk and then cut that scene.
Yeah, like Omar Sy is awesome, and it's it's funny on a little bit of a tangent, but it was funny
Yeah, yeah.
this
Sorry.
year in Jurassic World, like he's doing that scene with Chris Pratt and Vince D'Onofrio, and it's just like wow, we've got three different Marvel actors all in a scene here together that have nothing to do with each other. That's where we are
The
with
thing I
superhero
can't
films.
the thing I can't stop talking about is that Chris Pratt has now played his most recent three biggest roles are all Legos.
Yes, and he loves Legos, so
I just can't stop talking about that. I think it's hilarious.
that's
And one
great.
of them was a Lego in the first place.
Yes,
Like there's not a real person version of Emmett from the Lego movie.
no, that's right. And if there was, Chris Pratt might be the closest thing to it.
That's right. Chris Pratt is the living embodiment
Of Emmett.
of the Lego version of the character that he played that was a Lego in the first place.
Yeah, how great.
Anyway, I'm sorry. What are we talking about?
Oh yeah, X-Men.
Next.
um, yeah, but so what was we talking about earlier?
You were making some point. I don't even know.
We were talking about with Bishop and the road cut and what have you, and yeah,
Yeah.
like I enjoyed seeing Magneto and Iceman breaking into the X Mansion. That was a lot of fun. But I don't feel like the other scenes that were added into that cut were necessarily improvements on the film.
No, certainly not. Well, and I mean, like the there was some really cool thematic stuff with the mansion and home and stuff, and I love the way that we cut back and forth between breaking into that mansion and then breaking in the past to get the Magneto helmet,
Yeah,
or whatever it was we were breaking in to get. But overall, yeah, Singer was real smart to not release that in theaters.
yeah, yeah. And
But anyway, I don't know. I think I did a video on that at some point, but it's nice to hear you talk about it.
but I guess back to this trailer.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess we should go down the list and talk about the characters because
Well, what's your thoughts on where they're going with Havoc? I mean, besides just they'll probably kill him.
yeah, I mean, I do think that his death might be the catalyst for Scott to be to embrace being the leader of the X-Men because what we've sort of heard about this character so far and what Ty Sheridan has talked about, is that he's not exactly the Cyclops that we know in the films, and he is a little bit more of a rebel. And I kind of feel like since we are getting some stuff with the Summers family, that Havoc might be the guy that's like, okay, he's got powers here. This is the place where we can take him and learn to control them because that's what happened with me. And the other interesting thing that they've talked about with Scott is that he's essentially blind at the beginning of the film, which is a really
Oh,
interesting idea because
that's cool.
where like the backstory for the Ruby Quartz in the comics is that Mr. Sinister disguised as a doctor is the one that prescribes them. So I believe,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, which is why the Sinister and Cyclops thing is so awesome to me because he is just
Okay.
that obsessed. But obviously they're not going to do that in this film. If they did, it would blow my mind. But they're not doing that. I wouldn't think so. Him coming to the school, essentially, being afraid to look at anybody, I think is an interesting idea. So him eventually embracing the control that Cyclops has, I think the Havoc death will be the thing that drives Cyclops to being more like Cyclops.
Well, and that also. Oh, okay. So you basically already told us what your theory was, but I wasn't sure if we actually got to it. So I
No,
just
that's
wanted to.
okay. But yeah, I just because why else would I don't think that Havoc is necessarily a character that we needed to bring back. So I just feel like he is there for a reason.
Yeah, there is inherently a parallel there if that's what they're doing with him in his not in his being afraid to look at people and therefore to have really human interaction with Rogue. I mean, that's basically Singer doing his male version of Rogue now.
Yeah, which is an interesting idea because
That's actually really interesting. And then, if that's what it feels like, will make you really wish there had been interaction with them in that movie. But whatever.
yeah, well, and it'll also I think make people wish that they had seen not just more with Cyclops, but like more about what his power was. Like, because we get the sense if you go into X-Men 1 not knowing anything about the X-Men, like you would probably just think that he can turn his power on and off. It's not until Toad grabs his visor that you realize, oh, he has to like close his eyes to stop that. With his naked eyes. So that's an interesting. Yeah, that's always been interesting to me is that they don't really go into that. They do a little bit in one of the deleted scenes where Gene says, he needs control because if he could just punch a hole in a mountain if he looks at it. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with his powers here because there's a great shot in this movie where, sorry, in this trailer where it's Scott kind of unleashing his power, which we haven't really gotten to see a lot of yet, apart from that one shot in X-Men 3 at Alkali Lake, because of course his power is heat vision in X-Men Origins. So well done there. But yeah, so like, and it looks like he's in pain almost, like unleashing his optic blast. So it'll be kind of fun to see them deal with him developing his powers here. And he does have that line in the trailer as well, where he talks about how not all of them can control their powers. So, I would imagine that would involve, Nightcrawler. He might wind up inside a wall if you can't see where he's going,
Yeah.
and
I
same
mean,
with Jean.
well, and I'm imagining that that's going to be a big thematic thing and probably have a lot to do with if Professor X is in more of the movie than you think he's going to be and has a big character arc, or maybe Scott, just generically Scott and the other new major X-Men having a character arc about learning to control their powers versus what Apocalypse is going to try to get them to do, which is to completely embrace whatever they are and just unleash it. You've got kind of a Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker thing going on,
Yeah, that's true.
and I imagine they'll play that up real hard. Shades, we have been answering the question for the last several years for a lot of people about a lot of characters with decent to great superhero movies. Why is anyone a fan of this character? And with just a lot of characters that the general public is finally getting to know, that they may have heard of or maybe even hadn't, that didn't understand the basic essence of those characters because they didn't exist anywhere but in comics for those people. And Cyclops is going to be one of those probably,
Yeah,
where there he was in 4 movies, and finally, oh, that's why anyone gives a crap about Cyclops. Okay.
yeah, and that's something. Obviously, being the Cyclops fan that I am, is really exciting for me. To
And I think Storm will be exactly the same way.
Storm will be interesting. But like on the note of Cyclops, it'll be interesting to see, if they how far they do delve into that character, and if I'm totally justified in being excited for this. Not that I haven't been let down with how Cyclops has been done in the past, and I say that with nothing but love for James Marsden. Not his fault, but it's. I hope that is something that they do really they do capitalize on. And with Storm, it'll be interesting there as well because Storm to me was really generic in the movies, and Hallie was just kind of. I mean, let alone the fact that her accent just completely drops in X-Men 2, but she was just kind of there. We don't really know much about her. She can control the weather. That's about it. Like, what is her
So yeah.
character? Yeah.
Yeah. And then in 3, she's just trying to take over and be a leader character and is not any more developed than she was before.
Yeah.
And here, it looks like they're gonna make her more of a like roguish, punkish character, which is cool since they're doing the Mohawk.
Yes.
That's gonna be like a physical embodiment of her. It's gonna reflect her personality, and that we'll probably get to actually see her become the more mature, stalwart leader character that she's supposed to be later. And that's really smart. She's one of the characters we're making a Horseman, yeah?
Yes, she is. Yeah, it's her, Psylocke, Magneto, and Archangel.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
It does, and making Storm a. I'm glad that they're not just making her another, new X-Man. I think it really does benefit her going through an arc in, sort of being this lost. Because in the comics, she was like a thief, and that Xavier found and took under his wing. So, like doing that here, but it's Apocalypse taking her under his wing. That's frightening. So I am interested to see how exactly they handle that, and she might go through the character arc of realizing the error of her ways, and eventually joining the X-Men.
I want to talk about Mystique because the big thing that I cannot stop talking about after the end of Days of Future Past is what in the world happens with her and Wolverine.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
it was not a foregone conclusion to me that she would even be in this movie.
No.
And or that she would be doing anything but being kind of lurking in the shadows, and there she is, and not only is she there but rejoining the X-Men. This is going to be a really, if it's handled right, this is going to be a really interesting trilogy, going back and rewatching it, that you've got this character that's with Xavier and leaves, and then has this disillusionment with Magneto, and then in the third one ends up coming back to him. And that's a place where we can go again, because we can go anywhere we want to now that we've soft rebooted. There's no telling what we're doing with that and where she's going to be at the end. Um, Although if they don't kill her off or find some way to write her out, I'll be real surprised.
Yeah. I think it's not necessarily confirmed, but I know there has been talk that Jennifer Lawrence isn't coming back, which I gotta admit I'm completely fine with. I
That's the only reason I say that. I mean, like I've heard conflicting reports that she's not coming back, but then like she kind of likes doing it, so maybe she'd come. I'm not sure what exactly is going on there, but
Yeah, maybe when she's not getting that Hunger Games paycheck, she might realize that she misses the X-Men. I did think that they did a quite a good job with Mystique in Days of Future Past, and actually there being a purpose for that story revolving around her so much. Easy for me to
it's my
say.
favorite word.
This film, I'm having a little bit of a harder time based on what we've been given so far as to seeing why she is still so important. Uh, and yeah, I'm a little over the mystique of these films.
You're over the mystique of the mystique.
I'm
Yeah.
over the mistake of the mistake. That's true.
Well, I mean, we'll see. The fact that she's there, and the fact that Stryker is in this one again, like
Yes.
we just cannot stop using Stryker.
Oh man, Stryker's been in more X-Men movies than Cyclops. Like
Yeah, it's hilarious at this point.
yeah, it's
But
a rib on fans that only know him for God Loves Man Kills, because like that was what he was famous for, and now
yeah,
I mean the general public see him as like a major X-Men villain, and he's not.
you know, yeah, but what they did with him in X2, he's earned that.
Oh, absolutely no. I
I mean,
don't.
for this franchise, you know what Stryker is? Stryker is General Zod.
Yeah, I'd agree with that actually. Yeah,
That's what he is. He's that character that was like in one thing. Now the difference is, Man Loves God Kills was a huge story, and General Zod was this really obscure Superman character that nobody had heard of. But he's in a movie and he's really popular and it's a great performance, and now we just cannot stop putting him in things.
yeah, and like I actually do love uh like how they've done Stryker in these movies. I love Brian Cox. I didn't mind what they did with him in X-Men Origins, and I liked young Stryker. That was fine in Days of Future Past. We're getting him again here, and I know that Hugh Jackman is also appearing, so I guess that will be the tie up for that loose end from Days of Future
I
Past.
I hope so, but then they've also been using him just because they need military people, so
Yeah,
he could be there and have nothing to do with
that
Wolverine.
is true. Yeah,
I mean, Wolverine could just have some sort of a cameo, but you would expect that if Wolverine is in that movie anywhere whatsoever, they have to explain something about what happened at the end of that movie and what he's doing. Because I can't help but continue to wonder if Weapon X ever even happens, and because you have to remember that that's a Wolverine that doesn't have the memories that he does in Days of Future Past from the future, because he snapped back.
yeah,
So now we've got a Wolverine that essentially we know nothing about.
yeah.
I mean, I guess you would assume that he has most of the history that he had in Origins.
I would guess so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, apart from the
I
fact
mean, a
that
lot of people like to say, "Oh, we've written that out of continuity completely, and it's not canon anymore." I'm still not convinced of that.
no, especially when the fact that we get footage from that movie in Days of Future Past, and Xavier looking in Wolverine's mind. So no, they're still canon. It's just that the future events have changed. Like I guess one could say that. Although it is funny because we see Wolverine in the Vietnam War in that movie in Origins, and yet during the Vietnam War in Days of Future Past, he was, guarding the woman that he was sleeping with. So
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff with Wolverine in that movie because then there's that thing where like he seems to remember things from that, but then he shouldn't remember. So I don't know. It's
yeah, I mean, I feel like we were meant to I feel like we were meant to know that Wolverine got all of his memories back, but I don't know how they expected us to know that.
yeah. I mean, obviously, whatever they're doing with the third Wolverine movie could give us a complete explanation of the new backstory, but the fact that she's in this really intrigues me.
Yeah, it's
They have to have thought about that because that's a thing that if memory serves, Singer said. I forget if I saw this in an interview or a commentary or what, but if memory serves, he was like, yeah, it just seemed like a cool idea at the last minute to have the ice flash,
yes, yeah, he was
and now I'm
originally
like, well,
gonna end it
you've
a
written
different way.
yourselves into a corner now. You got to do something with that. Like because of a cool callback with the ice flashing, you have now rewritten Wolverine's entire backstory. Or
Yeah,
at least Weapon X thing. That is potentially awesome. That is like Breaking Bad writing if you do it right. But
potentially.
yeah,
I mean, I
potentially.
guess it could be something as simple as Stryker wakes up and goes, "Hey, who's this other me?" And Mystique runs away and it's like, "Oh, look at this mutant that you've left me." It could be as simple as that. But
Why would she do that?
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to fixate on that too much. But that's the big thing that I'm interested in knowing that she's in that movie.
yeah, that'll be interesting.
And I don't know. You wonder how much in the background she'll be, and because like again, juggling all these characters, you'd think that you'd have a difficult time pairing out the screen time to have her patch up things or whatever they're going to do with her with Magneto and in Professor X, and she might be largely in the background. I have no idea.
Yeah,
Who knows? So you also got to wonder where Quicksilver fits in.
yeah. I kind of feel like he's in this film to aid the X-Men in trying to stop his dad. Because we did get that tease at the end of Future Past where Magneto's given the big speech about the Brotherhood, so you would imagine that he would probably join Magneto during that time. And I that's what I'm thinking. We do see in this trailer him running at full speed, and it doesn't exactly look like he's in control. Um, or maybe because he's running through the mansion, which is interesting, and
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that. I was too fixated on the Rush T-shirt.
which is a great continuation. He just loves
Well,
bands.
it's also really funny because he runs really fast and he's wearing a T-shirt that says Rush.
I didn't even think of that, but that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
But and also in the trailer we get like that explosion within the mansion in bullet time. So I mean he could just be involved in that, trying to because there's like kids standing around it, or like students. So maybe he's just trying to get those guys out of the way, and he's running there as fast as he can. I mean, who knows? But I feel like I said, we've got that shot of him in the X Jet with Scott, Jean, Beast, and Mystique, and Moira is the other person in that scene or in that shot. So I guess he could be aiding the X-Men in trying to take down the Brotherhood because his father's been taken over.
Yeah. Um, I'm really hoping that Nightcrawler gets more screen time than anybody expects he will. And I don't know if I can expect that, but I mean, if there's any chance of that, but it can't be an accident that you put Nightcrawler in the movie where we find out that Apocalypse essentially invented all of religion.
Yes, and I would it be. This is another thing. Is it safe to assume that Mystique is in fact not his mother in this continuity? Like,
I guess I don't know.
yeah, like I mean, they kind of teased that her and Azazel might get together at the end of First Class, but they didn't really follow up on that. She didn't get particularly upset about him as much as she did the fact that everybody was dead, in that scene
But
in
it's
Future
also
Past.
important. Yeah, but they might have just not thought of it yet, and they'll just try to patch it up and make it work. But the years line up. Like he'd be the right age,
Yeah, he would. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
wouldn't he? Because what
20
wasn't that
years
60?
later. Yeah.
And this is close to 20 years later, or is it straight up 20 years later?
I mean, it would be around 20 years later, and it's not like these
Yeah,
characters are 20. I mean, they're teenagers, so that works.
yeah. So that makes me think that maybe they will go there,
They might, yeah.
but who knows?
Yeah, the fact that because that was something that was originally written into X-Men 2, funny enough, like when
Yeah,
Mystique is pretending to be Yuriko and she's looking through all the files, she finds files on Nightcrawler as well, because obviously, Stryker, um,
he's been
controls
using
him.
it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And she has this surprised reaction of, oh no, they got him. So, that was obviously something that they were referencing in X2 and then wrote out and left it quite ambiguous with their one scene.
yep. Yeah. But I think it's really neat that and I meant to say this earlier, so I'll say it now. That we've got we were talking earlier about alternate history, and that we're doing these really neat revisionist history things with these movies, and that we have increasingly done more of it as we've gone along. Now that we're in the '80s, it's not just revisionist '80s, but it's revisionist the history of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Be- because you've got Apocalypse all the way at like almost the dawn of time, and people worshiping him up onto a god. It'll be really neat to see if they have that shake Nightcrawler's faith, and if they go there, they really should. I
Yeah.
mean, why else would you put him in this movie? But the thing that concerns me is that his blurb on the wiki for this movie says that he's supposed to be a source of comic relief.
Which,
And of course, Nightcrawler is a jokey character, so you can do both.
yeah,
But I'm just hoping they do both.
I hope they do both as well. Yeah. I kind of feel like we might be getting a Nightcrawler that's a little similar to the X-Men Evolution Nightcrawler. I just have a feeling about that. Um,
Yeah.
which I'm fine with because I like that Nightcrawler. That Nightcrawler is very funny. But I agree with you. I mean, I think we could get both. I don't necessarily think we'll get one or the other. Um, and this the role that these younger X-Men will have is intriguing all around. Like, I mean, hearing McAvoy say Jean was something that I thought was so cool because it was
Yeah.
like, oh, he's Xavier now. He is. And it's so the role that Jean will have, they focus on her at the beginning, I think, because it's a familiar X-Man. I don't necessarily think that we'll get a lot of character stuff with her. I could be wrong, but I kind of feel like of the three, she might be the one that gets the least amount of characterization.
But I also feel like they are pushing her and Storm and Cyclops as the three big new most important X-Men. So if they don't get a lot to do, they're going to make it really clear that that is our replacement for Professor X and Beast, and the other characters that we've made the main people we keep focusing on. You also got to wonder what's going to happen to Beast, because I don't see him being in movies after this.
Um, Interesting. I would like to see the continuation of Beast because I like how they've done this Hank McCoy, but uh,
I just they're going to have a passing of the torch for the generations thing going on.
yeah, I
Um, because again, just the way that Singer's been talking about it, it really sounds like everybody that's mattered before is not going to matter after this.
yeah, maybe I wouldn't, and I've said this, after Days of Future Past, like I wouldn't mind if we got films set in the future, with Cyclops or Kitty or Jean or what have you.
Me too. We won't get
We,
that,
we won't get
but
that though. So, like, if this is my only place to get Beast, I kind of hope that they don't write him out. But I would like to see a movie with, you know, Cyclops and Jean and Nightcrawler and Storm and Beast. Like, I think that would be, a fun movie to do.
yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, yeah, who knows? Maybe they won't do that.
Maybe,
But that's just
yeah.
But that's just what it's kind of sort of seemed like. Well, we're up into an hour. What else do you want to talk about? We haven't mentioned Psylocke. I don't know that there's anything that we know about her besides she's going to be a horseman.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting the horseman that they have picked here because obviously Magneto is a major player, in these films, and he really was not, super focused on in this trailer at all. Not that you miss him, but like he's definitely there, but we don't get to focus on him as much as we did the previous films, and um, it is interesting going with Psylocke because she is a major X-Man that they haven't used yet properly anyway, and Archangel. I mean, they've done what they did with Emma Frost in First Class, and ignoring what has been done in a previous film and just changing his age,
Yeah.
which I don't mind at all because I would like to see more of Angel, and that means that Iceman is the only original X-Man that's not in this movie.
Yeah, but with what we did with Days of Future Past, you can't pretend that didn't happen.
No, and I'm fine with that because I like Sean Ashmore that I don't want them to erase what they did with him. But yeah, so the fact that we've got Angel and he's Archangel, he's like the one true horseman in this movie from the comics. So
Yeah.
I love that because I always found Archangel just a really fascinating fall from grace because in the original comics he was very much because he was a billionaire. He was Warren Worthington, or maybe not a billionaire, but he was certainly a rich guy, and he was Warren Worthington the third, and felt the need to introduce himself as such. And then he was kind of just an X-Man for a while, and then they did Archangel, and it really rejuvenated and made him important again. And the fact that they're going straight to that, obviously he's not blue, but we've got enough blue characters in this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of blue characters in this movie.
Yeah, but we do have his silver, wings, and his shooting the little daggers from them, which is great. That's straight up Archangel. So that's really fun as a fan. The fact that we are actually getting to do Archangel, where I never thought we'd actually get to go to that.
Yeah, I never thought we'd see that either. Magneto, as a horseman, is kind of brilliant.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
And it's a really exciting thing, potentially thematically, because Apocalypse is in some ways kind of what Magneto thinks he is or pretends he is.
Exactly. Here's this guy in Magneto who, hated what was done to him and felt that he was controlled and manipulated by Sebastian Shaw, who then goes on to try and be the savior for mutants and wants humanity to go in one direction. And then here's Apocalypse, who just wants death and destruction in a lot of ways and feels like he's entitled to it. And I feel like Magneto's really going to have an opportunity to step back and look at what he's done. And the fact that he's being manipulated here once again is just a really inspiring choice to make Magneto a horseman.
Well, also because the distinction between them is that Magneto is preaching that mutants are better than humans and really believes that. Not that, I mean, he thinks he should lead them because he believes more in his cause than anybody else does, but he really does believe that if you are a mutant, you are equal with him no matter what your power is,
Yeah.
and no matter anything about you. And Apocalypse, and I really think it's cool how their powers kind of reflect this. Apocalypse doesn't necessarily have that, or at least from what I'm gathering from the trailer. Apocalypse's deal is, and I'm above all the mutants too.
Yes.
Because I'm the first of them, I'm the most powerful of them, I can take all their powers. So like once I take your powers, I'm better than you.
Yes.
And I'm on top. And so now Magneto is just this other pawn to be controlled. Now Apocalypse can say the pawns go first.
That's right. And Magneto
See,
is
which
a
was
pawn.
always one of the problems with that movie for me, is that I always thought that it was a misstep to have Magneto look at any of the mutants as lesser than him.
Yes, that was a big problem with, and just the fact that it doesn't make sense that he would, bring Jean along and then be like, "Useless mutants, go die."
Yeah. I mean, he of course always has that if you're not with me, you're against me mentality. So
Yes.
he can look at some mutants like they're the lowly humans because they're like collaborators, with the humans, they believe in that cause over his, so they're mulligans now.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of Apocalypse using him, and now he uh gets kind of a taste of what someone else acting superior is like. And
Yes.
like, if you have that survival of the strongest attitude, and you're trying to justify it with evolution, what would you do if you found out that there was some other more advanced, more sort of evolved, I guess, being than you
Yeah.
that shows up and takes over? Would you like would your ideology go so far to say, okay, well, if I really believe in this, then I guess I'm now the second class citizen and they're third class citizens?
Yeah.
So
It's
anyway,
really interesting putting into.
Kirk, you there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm there.
Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Oh,
I can
sorry.
now.
Yeah, sorry. I think we might be a little, just a little bit behind. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to bring up specifically about the trailer?
No, I'm good. We've talked about this forever, but there was a lot of stuff to mine, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is cool that we are following up on the ancient Egypt stuff that they did establish in Days of Future Past and the after credit scene.
Yeah,
So the fact that this film is going to have such a wide scope in terms of what we do, the something I find interesting, the imagery of New York getting destroyed. Obviously that's imagery that we've seen in a lot of films recently.
yeah,
Something that I
yeah,
found quite interesting is because it's the '80s. You've got the World Trade Center in the
yeah.
background,
And
and
they put it there, and they're
that
not
was
afraid of that.
no, and I do applaud them for that, for not being afraid of that. And I it is a kind of a weird sight now. Like I said, seeing New York get destroyed is something we've seen in plenty of films. But and even in another trailer this week with Ninja Turtles. But
Yeah, that's right.
seeing the World Trade Center there, the Twin Towers having been gone for over 10 years now, it's weird seeing that, but brings it back to something that we've talked about, how the World Trade Center are in X-Men 1, and are even in the poster for
Yeah,
that film. I thought it was kind of funny, not funny, but when we did the commentary for Future Past, some people in the comments were saying, well, obviously X-Men 1 takes place prior to 2001 because the Twin Towers are there. And it's
oh
like,
yeah.
well, they couldn't exactly predict that 9/11 was going to happen. So that's just kind of one of those things that you sort of, suspend your disbelief about. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
now they made this about history.
they have. So
Then
now
you've
it's,
got then you've got that point, because now you can pinpoint the dates. I mean, like, it would be kind of silly to say, okay, this one takes place in '83, but then, or whenever it happens, and then after that, the dates are ambiguous. It would be somewhat weird to do that, especially because what are we gonna do moving forward? Like, when will the next one be set?
yeah, it's a good
Are
point. The
we gonna
fact
do
that
one in the
we said,
'90s? Are we gonna do one in the
yeah,
mid
well,
2000s now? Like what are we gonna do?
kind of hope so. I hope we do get one in the '90s. The fact that they're 10 years apart, all of them, I guess since we haven't really, uh, these guys, are meant to have aged 20 years, and
Yeah.
Havoc certainly doesn't look like he's a man in his 40s potentially. And I guess Moira should also be a bit older. Obviously, Mystique, it doesn't matter because that's not a true form, but I think they've done a decent job with Magneto. I think the
Yeah.
disheveled beard and that does age him, and obviously the bald head will immediately age uh, McAvoy. But yeah, it is funny, specifically with at the very least, he's meant to be 40, and yeah, he certainly doesn't look that. So that's kind of funny.
Well, see, they have to keep Moira McTaggart looking young, because otherwise she can't use equipment the CIA didn't give her. See,
Uh,
so you still, so you have to have that, because that's her big line in that movie.
that's That's right.
So see,
yeah.
that's why she gets to keep looking young. Yeah.
It took me a while to catch on to that one. I'm sorry, but yes,
No,
she
that's
does get
okay.
it in the first one.
I was proud of that joke, and I knew you'd catch it eventually. You probably haven't watched that movie many times as I have.
Um, she's got, she's saving herself with Dr. Hendry. She's gotta get in that booth.
The booth. Well, anyway,
Uh,
well, Kirk, we've got some lag and stuff, so I think we should probably go ahead and end this up now.
no worries.
Everybody, thanks always for listening. Hope you enjoyed our really long, our really lengthy discussion about the new X-Men trailer with some speculation. And let us know in the comments what you think about some of the things we predicted and what some of your own predictions are. And we are both super stoked and can't wait to talk about it when it comes out.
Absolutely, yeah. This is definitely the film I'm looking forward to the most next year, and I am, obviously, a big X-Men fan, but yeah, I'm super pumped for this movie.
Thanks again, folks. We'll see you again soon. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Shades.
Bye.
Bye.